Hey, welcome to another Flood Court Media camping thing. I'm Jason, and today I want to talk about what happens when you're out hiking and you've lost track of what direction your tent is, and you've left your trusty compass or your GPS device back at said tent. Well, everyone knows you can use nature to figure out the rough estimate of direction you're headed, but not everyone knows how to do that. So today I thought I'd give you 5 quick tips on how you can use the sun, moon, stars, and then wind and storms to get a rough estimate of what direction you're headed. As well as that, I'm going to give you one quick bonus tip on how you know when you need to start setting up camp, because it takes a little bit of time to get your tent set up and fire started and all of that. And there's a quick, easy way to figure out just when you need to start doing that. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first and most obvious tip is using the sunset or sunrise or moonrise or moonset to figure out what direction you're going. The sun sets in the west, rises in the east. However, you need to remember that the sun doesn't set directly in the west unless it's the time of year for your part of the hemisphere or you're on the equator where the sun is going directly overhead.
What you need to know about navigating with the sun is that it moves in an arc across the sky. During most of the year in my part of North America at 40 degrees north, the sun stays in the southern half of the sky. This means the sun rises and sets south of true east and west. During the summer months, however, the lean of the earth causes the sun to swing in a bigger arc. The rising and setting is now north of due east and west, but it still arcs up into the southern hemisphere at noon. It's only around the spring and autumn equinoxes that the sun reliably crosses directly over due east and west. This means you need to be conscious of the time of year and roughly how far away from the equator you are to allow yourself to compensate for the sun's off-center path.
So right here is west, and I know that that is slightly off to the side. So as you're walking with the sun in the northern hemisphere and it's not directly overhead, you gotta remember if you're head west, it needs to kind of be over your left shoulder as you're walking, depending on the time of year. Same thing if you're heading east, it needs to be over your right shoulder. And reverse that if you're in the southern hemisphere. Those of you lost on the equator are lucky because you got a perfect map. Now another trick we can use to use the sun to help us navigate is to use shadows from sticks. Now I would use this long stick, but it's a little hard to see on camera, so I'm going to use this big tripod. So if I come and set it here, and then I'm going to use a rock or another stick and put it at the tip of the shadow. And then we're going to wait an hour and a half or so, and the shadow is going to move. And that movement will let us navigate. And I'll show you how in just a second. All right, it's been about an hour. And I have to stop it because the sun is almost setting, the shadow is moving a lot faster. Now, if the sun were this close to setting, I could just use the sunset to help me figure out this direction. But imagine the sun's up higher and you can't quite tell which direction it's moving. This would be a much better trick. Anyway, we have our initial mark, which is right here. I'm going to put a pine cone there so we can see it better. And then we're going to come all the way out here to where the shadow is now, way out here. And so, because, like I said, the sun goes east to west, we know that. I want to take a stick, in this case because it's such a far distance, and line up my 2 pine cones. And now I know that this direction is west. And this is going to work regardless of where the sun is in the sky. And if it's around the noon hour, you might have to wait longer, longer than 1 hour. It might take 2 hours in order to get the shadow distances far enough apart. But it's going to give you a really good estimate of which direction is east and west. So to check this, I've got my compass here. So we'll just get the north lined up with north. And yes, that is really close to going directly east and west. Now, as soon as I started recording how to use wind and weather to navigate, I quickly realized this was going to be too big of a topic for this video, which already has other stuff. So I'll just give you a couple quick tips, save the rest for another video. One, basically you just need to know about your area. So if you're traveling abroad or someplace new, you should take time to learn the weather patterns. I know my area of the United States, central United States, pretty well. Nebraska, eastern Colorado, South Dakota, Iowa. I generally know how the wind and weather works. So I can use that because I have some prior knowledge. But the first tip you can use is to use the cirrus clouds. Now the cirrus clouds are the ones way up high. They're usually wispy, way up there. And wind up there does not change direction nearly as much as it does down here near the surface. And so if you see some cirrus clouds or other high clouds, you can also use airplane contrails. Find it based on like a tree branch or something and sit there and watch it for 15 minutes and see the direction it's moving. And then compare it based off of a known source, such as the shadows that we went over or something like that. And then you can navigate by those. If you lose track of the sun or something goes behind other clouds or something, you can navigate by those upper clouds for hours and sometimes up to days without them changing direction too much. The next tip is if you happen to know what the weather is supposed to be like over the next couple of days. If it's going to get warmer, I know in this area, wind usually comes from the southwest. If it's going to get colder, it usually comes from the north. And so you can take something like a handkerchief or something like that and hold it up and figure out which direction it's going. And right now it's blowing really strongly. And I know tomorrow and tonight it's going to get colder than it has been the last couple days. So that tells me I know this area that the wind's blowing from the north. So I've positioned myself here with the wind blowing directly into the lens. And hopefully that's going to be in focus here. You can see we're going pretty well north there. The final tip about using storms is almost always in my area, storms come from west to east, usually from, well, it depends. It can be from the southwest or the northwest. If it's snow, it usually comes from the northwest because it's coming down from a stream from the Canadian Rockies. And so I can kind of watch those storm clouds move and get a feeling for what direction is what. But so those are some quick general tips you can use to navigate with the wind and weather. It's a real art form how to use it using the prevailing winds and the way the tops of the trees grow and bend. I'm not familiar with it enough to be able to explain it well, so we'll save it for another video. So here's a bonus tip for you. How do you know when to start setting up at camp? Well, the rule of thumb is to set it up with 2 hours left before the sun sets. How can you figure that out if you don't know what time the sun sets? Well, there's a simple handy trick for that.
The sun moves across the sky 15 degrees in 1 hour, and it just so happens that your outstretched hand, the fingers on it, cover up 15 degrees of the sky. And so you can actually hold out your arm at arm's length, and
so that means each finger of your 4 fingers is 15 minutes. And so if I come out here and put my hand at the horizon or where the sun is going to set, so behind those trees, so I'm going to raise it above those trees, and then stack it up, I can see that I have roughly 2 hours and 15 minutes before the sun is going to be behind those trees. It doesn't matter what time zone you're in, if it's daylight savings time, because it's just based on degrees, not on actual time. And I know that having checked the sun setting time, that's pretty accurate. Within about, for me, today it's about 7 minutes difference. So this is really hard to do with this camera, but you can see if I'm about at arm length here from the camera, and then put that arm out there, you can see I'm just at 2 hours until the sun would go behind the horizon, because each finger is 15 minutes. So it's time to start setting up camp. The next tip I have for you is using the moon to find a southerly direction. And it works in nearly all phases of the moon except for a new moon and a full moon. So what you basically do is look at the crescent shape of a moon, and you look at the 2 points, and you draw an imaginary line through the points of the moon. And that line is going to point in a southerly direction if you're in the northern hemisphere. If you're in the southern hemisphere, that line is going to point to a northerly direction. And so you can visualize that, you can imagine you can hold up a stick, and even if it's not a crescent, but slightly curved, not a full moon or new moon like I said, you can still use your imagination to figure out where those points would be. So now that it's night and the moon is still out, it's actually a couple days since I last recorded the first try at this. Now it's created a half of a moon and there's a distinct line, so it might be easier to see how it points in a southerly direction. So I'm going to get behind the camera and hold up my phone compass on that and show you how it points southerly.
It's almost at half moon right now and it's created a really nice line. The line actually rotates as the moon travels through the sky from rising to setting, keeping it pointed in the same direction. I've frozen the moon, and now I'm going to focus in on my phone's compass. I'll line the guide arrow up with the moon behind my phone. For this, I'll just slide the copy over on top of it, and you can see that the line points southerly. I say southerly because it's not always due south, nor is it easy to get a perfectly exact reading on the direction.
Now that we have a clear night sky, I can show you how to find north using Polaris, the northern star. And Polaris is almost due north, and it's pretty easy to find once you know what to look for. There are 2 constellations you can use to help you pinpoint exactly where the North Star is, and once you learn what it looks like, you can find it pretty easily. Unfortunately, this only works in the northern hemisphere, not in the southern hemisphere to show you how to navigate down there, so maybe if I ever get down to Australia, I can do an update on this video. Anyway, let me jump behind the camera and show you how to find it. To find Polaris, the North Star, the easiest way is to look for the Big Dipper. I have it on my screen right here, and hopefully you can see it. It's currently upside down with the handle going off to the right and the bucket, well, on the left, those 4 kind of square stars. What you do is you look at the left side or the outside part of the bucket. So in this shot, it's the left side, those left 2 stars. And if you follow those straight down, let me get this lined up here. So if we follow this straight down, you want to see right there, almost near the center of the screen, there it's in the center, is Polaris. So the easiest way to find that star is to follow the Big Dipper, those 2 stars, straight down, and that's going to be Polaris. Another way to find it is, let me see if I can find Cassiopeia here. So Cassiopeia is this W-shaped constellation right here in the center of the screen. And if you follow the what's currently in the middle of the screen and the one down below it, that part of the W, and follow that up, it almost points directly at Polaris as well, which is right there. It's not perfect, but it's pretty dang close as well. So if we come straight down, you can see there's Cassiopeia again. And so using those 2 constellations, you should always be able to find the North Star. It's almost due north. It's like 0.8 of a degree off of true north. And it varies very little throughout the whole night. So you can put a 5-hour time lapse on it and hardly see any movement. Now Polaris is also part of the Little Dipper, but the Little Dipper is really hard to see in city lights. But you can see the Little Dipper going off up there. But here, if I zoom back out and drop the camera, the phone, you can see that I can't see it on my LCD screen, the Little Dipper. But anyway, that's going to do it for this camping tips thing. If you enjoyed the information in this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps other people find the video when they're trying to find this type of thing. And then while you're at it, right next to it, click the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the other camping tips or travel vlogs or mountain climbing stuff or tech tutorials that I do. But until next time, I'm doing what I love. Keep doing what you love. Thanks for watching.